Welcome to Overpod, the show that hosts overemployed individuals. I'm Mebby, and today we're talking about Ben's overemployed journey. Now it's time to welcome Ben to Overpod. He is here to give his experiences with OE and his journey. So let's welcome the mastermind behind the Overemployed Masterclass. Ben, thanks for joining us here, buddy.
Hey, Mebby. Thanks for having me on the Overpod, and it's going to be fun talking with this, especially since I haven't seen many of these type of interviews on YouTube or any platforms yet. So happy to be here.
Yeah, so I just want to say, I know you have a busy schedule, so thanks for joining us on such a short notice. So let's get right into it. So tell me about yourself, Ben. Walk me through your resume.
Yeah, so I'll give you a general background of not just my background in terms of work, but also my mindset going into overemployment as well, how I kind of got into it. So basically, as many of the viewers to this channel, I'd assume as well, I work in tech. Um, I won't say exactly what tech position exactly, but I do work in tech. Mostly kind of fields that might be boring to some people. Think things like insurance. I'm not saying that is what it is, but more lame kind of industries to the common people. And I've been doing this for about, even just with one job, for a little over 5 years.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's basically what my background was up to doing OE.
Yep.
And then it obviously changed after that, but that's my general background.
Yeah, you can remain anonymous through your background. Just wanted to ask a couple of specific questions. You don't have to go too much into detail into it, but just
Sure.
wanted to know a bit about your education. Like, did you go to university, college, anything along those lines? Did you have any internships on your belt? Anything along those lines?
Yeah, so I went to college. I guess for the Americans, it's college. For the other countries, it might be different, but yeah, we call it college in America. So,
Yep.
yeah, 4 year degree, bachelor's degree um, in software engineering.
Okay.
So, pretty typical thing that a lot of people might have, like getting into tech, so nothing too crazy. And then a few internships, but again, nothing too crazy, just pretty basic stuff.
Yeah. So for the viewers watching at home, can you give a quick and concise definition of what overemployment is?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so overemployment it doesn't have to be one way exactly of doing it, but in general, it's working multiple full time jobs, remote jobs at the same
Yep.
time. So the overlap doesn't have to be exactly like right on top. It could be different time zones, but in general, it's just working multiple full time remote jobs at the same time.
And if I may ask, can I ask how many jobs you're working currently?
Yeah. So at this point, I am at 3 jobs.
Yep.
And I didn't obviously start off right away with 3 jobs, but yeah, now I built up to 3 jobs.
Yeah, so how did you really find out about, overemployment, and how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I think like many other people, COVID kind of changed the game for work, especially in tech and basically any type of office type job. So once COVID hit, I was basically pushed to remote work out of necessity. So it's not like I was like blessed with remote work in terms of I was very experienced and just had the opportunity. No, COVID kind of forced that change. So when COVID hit, remote work was a real possibility for everyone to be full time remote forever. And then at one point, I think I saw a news article or something talking about other people that are doing overemployment. It wasn't exactly labeled overemployment; it might have been something else, but this was in the earlier stages of the trend, kind of. So it was basically just talking about other people that are working multiple full time jobs, remote jobs, since the pandemic, and they've been able to double or triple their income while because and I think another big thing is a lot of people, especially if they work remote jobs, they kind of know already that it doesn't really take a full 40 hours a week to work your job. So this kind of piqued my interest because it's something I could have like I related to right away. I was like, I know I could do this. So
Yep.
I started thinking and like looking into it more. Like, is this legal? Like, is this actually like a thing? And then that's kind of what got me started. Yeah.
So, is this similar to, let's say I had a software development job and after work I jumped to McDonald's. Would that count as overemployment?
I mean, technically, it depends who you ask. There's a really technical definition. I would say it does, but it would not be an effective way of being overemployed, right? Like in reality, if you want to be overemployed and be as efficient as possible, make the most amount of money from it, you want to do it at the same time, right? So you want to leverage that same time to get double the pay. Basically, you don't like if you have to work 15 hours a day. It's not really. There's no point at that point, right?
I mean, so my question to you is like, what really made you want to be overemployed? Like, aside from the money, like that's an obvious like goal, but what really wanted you to become like? Why'd you want to be overemployed overall?
Yeah. So this is, I think it's actually a really good question because this kind of evolves the more you are overemployed. I think a lot of people, obviously, like you said, get into it for the money and they stay in it for the money, which personally for me is the main thing as well. However, once you kind of start doing it, you realize you're learning so much more. You're able to delve into different industries at the same time and learn business processes, how they differ at different companies. You can literally see like, oh, this works well, this doesn't. It's much easier to see that. You basically like 10x your experience and your skill set while also multiplying your money. So the work ethic part of it is kind of nice in that sense. But obviously, I think at the end of the day, the money is kind of the big blessing here.
But let's say like for example, like let's say you're trying to like juggle multiple jobs right here. Like, can't you get caught by doing that in any sense?
You definitely can get caught. Um, I would say for most people, that's kind of the least of their worries. For most people, it always, if they ever fail at overemployment, because a lot of people have this fear, like, oh, I'm going to get caught, I'm going to get caught. But in reality, most people end up either quitting one of their jobs when they're overemployed, basically, or even getting caught because they're just slacking too much or they're not like completing good quality work on time. It doesn't mean you have to be like the best performer on your company or your team, but you have to obviously still deliver good quality work. So I think that's where most people get caught up when they fail to deliver. And getting caught by an actual employer, like you might be stressed about it, but it's kind of like the least of your worries. If you're smart about it, the chances are pretty low.
So let's say there is a conflict of some sort. Like, could you give us an example that you may have had a conflict between two jobs, like a meeting at the same time? And if you did, how did you manage that conflict between two jobs?
Yeah, that's another good question. Obviously, a lot of people have this question. I think people want to hear things that might be too good to be true, like it'll never happen, or you can plan this way if you just get the two perfect jobs or three perfect jobs. But in reality, you're always going to have conflicts at some point, and I have had a lot of conflicts. Sometimes it can cause issues, but for the most part, if you're smart about it and you know what you're doing on your team in the current week, month, or project timeline or whatever, you will be fine. Like you just have to. It really depends day to day. Even like if you know this meeting isn't really too important, you can kind of ignore it and pay more attention to another meeting. Like you can run meetings at the same time. Even sometimes you just skip meetings because like they're usually not really important. Like even if, and this is one thing that people get kind of stuck up on in terms of morality and like, oh, am I not being a good employee by not paying attention 100% to this meeting? But like in reality, even if you only had one job, most employees don't pay attention to meetings, right? Like they just kind of sit there and ignore what's being said half the time. And even if they did pay attention, it wouldn't really benefit them. Like it's kind of useless. So it is an issue, but like you can work through it 100%. And I think if people are scared of that, that's not something that should stop them from wanting to be overemployed.
You know, I think I agree to a sense as well because let's say you do lose one job, you always have the second one, like for insurance. But
Exactly.
yeah, so going off that, I just wanted to ask: is there like a magic number of how many jobs you should have? Should I have two, maybe three, four?
Yeah. So this depends, of course, which is kind of typical answer I keep giving, but for a lot of the overemployed stuff, it doesn't depend. I would say obviously at least two, but any more than I think three or four would probably be pushing it. But if you're able, I mean, to find those jobs, personally, I don't think I'd be able to find those type of jobs that I can really put away that little amount of work in. But if you can, I mean, good for you and all power to you, go for it. But if you find that you're having to churn and lose your jobs every like other month if you keep trying to stack more, just stick to like as little as possible. Honestly, like two or three is a sweet spot. I think any more than that is doable, but you're kind of pushing it. But again, if you can handle the workload and you like the extra money, go for it.
Great. Ben, this may be a personal question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to, but how much do you make yearly?
Yeah, so obviously I'll kind of give a range, but here at my point in my career and with my three jobs, I make about 300 to 375,000. I'll kind of give that range out there,
Wow.
so
Wow.
you can kind of just play with the numbers there, however you want. But yeah, that's what I make.
Wow. Yeah, so it's just wanted to jump in and ask you, so what was the driving force to make you want to be overemployed? And just could you just go into like your detail of your whole journey of overemployment and if you recommend it to other people, and if you do recommend it to people, like could you give any tips or advice for these people that want to become like you and overemployed?
For sure. So I think one thing that a lot of people that work office jobs or kind of just jobs in general, because in reality, a lot of people can get to a point where they can work an office job or a tech job or anything that they can study for, maybe even for a year and then get that job. So I think overemployment resonates a lot with these people because for me personally, I think a lot of people would relate to this is they always kind of wanted some extra sense of financial freedom. And I'm not talking about like making a couple million by the time you're 60, 65, and then retiring. No, I'm talking about being able to retire early, maybe even in your 30s, and not just retire, but also have somewhat of a nice lifestyle, right? Like being able to afford a nicer car or go on nice vacations, have complete time freedom, right? So a lot of people in these type of jobs want that, but it's hard, right? It's not easy to start a business because that's basically the main path you have to take if you want that type of lifestyle. You have to start a business, make a lot of money. If you want to make 400, $500,000 a year, you're not going to get that with one job usually. So that's kind of where overemployment comes in. It gives this option to people like me and like many of the viewers of this channel, I'd assume, that can already earn like 80 to 100,000 or more, and they don't need any more to start a business. They're already working remote. They can just get more jobs, and they can actually get to that point where they're kind of making like ridiculous amounts of money, right? Even though they haven't like kickstarted a unique business idea and put in hours and months of sweat and tears into it. No, they just got another job. And I think the beauty of overemployment. And for any people that want to get into it, I would say there's obviously a lot of things to look for in terms of what jobs are good for overemployment. The masterclass from this YouTube channel is great at explaining all of those things and giving you a really good guideline on how to base your foundations of becoming overemployed. But in general, you just have to really put yourself out there. You just have to apply. And it is a little scary. It is a risk, of course. You could always be caught. That's always going to be a risk, but you're not always going to have the option to double or triple your income, right? So I would say take advantage as much as you can of this trend, right, of remote work. You have to take advantage of it. Money is opportunistic, right? It comes and goes. So while you have the option, take the option.
All right, there you have it, guys. Ben is the mastermind behind the masterclass course, so please be sure to check that out. It was great to have you on the pod, Ben. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too.